Hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil by Mike King. I'm here with Chris McDonough, and this is quite a night. Chris, how you doing?
I'm off the hook, Michael. I'm so happy. This has been an amazing day.
It has been a busy day, hasn't it? I want to start out, Chris. Will you please explain what choir practice is? Because someone today wrote and said, I do not sing. Do we really do choir practice? Wondering about this channel.
Yeah, so great question. So choir practice is a rite of passage. Once you leave your field training officer and you're out on your own, all the old salty dogs get together. And one of our guests here tonight was one of those old salty dogs.
Yes, he is.
If you got an invite to come to choir practice, you'd made it. And all you do is you just sit on back then we just sit on the hoods of the cars and just, shoot the breeze. And so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, choir practice was always a rite of passage, and you were thrilled to get there. Mama Shan Shan, thank you. Sophia H, thank you for being here. Mimi J2, Avalon Apples. I haven't seen you for a while. It's great to see you. Yeah, Truth Seeker. Thank you, Rain Dancer. Get this one, Rain Dancer 98405 Washington. Thank you. My kids are brats. I'm not making a statement. I'm just shouting out to one of our listeners, Irma Anspach. To all of you, thank you so much, Chris. This is just great to see everybody piling in, and we already got 300 folks sitting here ready to get talking.
Yeah, Mike, this has been. I'm really proud of you. I'm very proud of you today. With the Phil show, with all the things that have been going on, and the fact that today was a big day, because I know behind the scenes, which a lot of our folks don't really know. They got to see a side of you that I've known for many years. So, and I know we're gonna breach that later on in the show. But we've got some big things happening tonight. It's spooky night, right?
I'm getting tingles in my spine right now. Keep us going. Tell me what this is about.
Spooky night. Okay, we've got Trisha here. We've got John here. We've got Paul here. We've got some ghost stories and authors and moms with jeans. YouTube channels. We got everything happening tonight. This off the hook.
This is the best part about choir practices. There are no rules except for our rules, and it is just really fun. Well, let's bring in Trish Strank and Paul Rimmasch. And Paul, did I just foul up your name?
A little bit. It's Rimmasch.
Rimmasch. I am so sorry. Tyler told me that twice, and I messed it up. Thank you both for being here. Trish, brand new YouTuber. Mom's jeans and crime scenes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Trish?
So I'm a mom of 3, and I work full time, and I just started a podcast. So I'm really excited about it. Yeah, I don't know. That's
and
all I do anymore.
Why on earth did you start a podcast?
Like I was saying before, I've been wanting to do it for a couple of years. And it was just going to be a podcast. And then I had everyone telling me, you've got to do videos and get onto YouTube. But I really want to make a difference. I think that this is a good platform. I've had a few situations where I've had people come in. I had one where this family was looking for their missing cousin, and they came in with flyers, and I was at work and I couldn't help them. And I don't know. I never want that feeling of how can I help somebody, or I don't know. I think this will be a good way for me to be able to help people more. And I have some skills with putting together volunteers and things like that. So I thought maybe someday I can use that. I can put that to use and create a group of people who want to do that with me. So
that's awesome. Wait, so do you tell us a little bit about your family and your moms? You're a mom. You've got 3 children.
Yep.
Okay. And that's a full-time job, 24/7.
It is. They keep me busy. They're fun though. Yeah, I've got a 12-year-old, and she's just in junior high, her first year, and that's been exciting. And then I've got an 8-year-old, and he's kind of just to himself, kind of a quiet little guy. And then I've got a 3-year-old, and he rules our house. We do whatever he says. So, yep, he's the boss.
And Paul, we're going to get over to you in just a second here, but I wanted to bring out too, Trisha's husband works in Homeland Security. Chris, kind of nice to keep that all in the PE family.
Yes,
and Trish, we ask that you extend to him our thanks for continuing to help our country be safe, and thank you for running a YouTube channel. We actually learned about Paul because of you and a little book giveaway that you've got going on. So let's introduce Paul Rimmasch, Fingerprints and Phantoms, the true tales of law enforcement and the paranormal. Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to write this kind of a book.
Okay. Well, once again, thanks for having me on tonight. This is a true pleasure. And it's nice to see Trish face to face too.
Yes, definitely.
She dressed up for the occasion. I just have my Weber State shirt on. So a little bit about myself. I'm a crime scene investigator for Weber Metro CSI, and I've been doing that for 23 years now. So I've been around a few times. I was out on a call the other day with a rookie police officer, and the victim, it was a burglary call. The victim was speaking to him and talking about his career. And then she looked over at me and said, "This isn't your first rodeo, is it?" And I'm like, Thank you for that. But yeah, I've been around for a long time. And over the years, it's funny that we're here on choir practice, because one of the things I love about law enforcement is the storytelling culture that exists. I love it. I mean, it's something that when I hang up my fingerprint brush one day, I'm going to miss terribly, because, on TV, they show, crime scenes and police shows. It's nonstop action, running around mile a minute. But in reality, there's a lot of downtime, right? So you're waiting for a search warrant to be signed, or you're sitting over at court, or it's the middle of the night and you have no calls going on. And so there's just lots of time to tell stories. And so I love campfire stories. I love the art and the craft of telling a good story. And so over the years, I just started to ask the different officers and forensic people that I worked with, ghost stories. Like, have you ever had anything weird that happened to you? And plenty of people have. Like, in fact, most officers that I've spoken to have had something unexplainable happen to them. And so my wife was like, "Hey, you should write those down in a book." And I'm like, "Hey, yeah, maybe I should." And so over the years, I would just write down 1 or 2 stories at a time. And then eventually I had enough and got them published. And it's been a really fun ride. And I've learned a lot along the way. And yeah, there's some really fun stories in there that I hope people enjoy, especially this time of year. If you're looking for a good Halloween read, this is definitely the book for you this week. Get some chills. But it's also, I've put in there a lot of kind of law enforcement insider information too. It's almost like stream of consciousness, different experiences in my job, and then they transfer into the ghost stories. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to write, and it's even more fun to read.
So Chris, we got to have him tell us at least one ghost story, real short, Paul. So keep thinking about that, because we don't want to give away too much. So think about that a little bit. And Trish, let's roll over to you for a minute. As you have started your channel and started looking at different criminal cases to look into, what's been the most compelling case for you? And then we'll maybe ask you a few questions about that.
Most compelling. Oh, I really, so my mom, she's into the Suzanne Morphew case, like big. And so I started kind of digging into it. I really am interested in the Suzanne Morphew. So I met Tyler about the time that you guys were searching for her. So since then, I'm like really intrigued. I don't know. I think that one's probably the one that's got me the most right now.
So have you gone back and binge watched all of our videos on Suzanne Morphew?
I've been doing some binge watching on you guys and a bunch of other channels too. So it's just interesting to see. Wow. It's interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah. Spread the wealth for sure.
Yeah.
So Paul, what, give us the one, man. Tell us one that just raises the hair on the back of your neck.
Well, there's not just one story like that. There's many stories, right, Trish? You've read the book.
Yes, it's good. Yep.
But probably the freakiest story out of the book has to do with a ghost following a crime scene investigator home from the crime scene. And that's the one that has kind of the biggest, I think, implications for everybody involved in law enforcement, because we go out on these death calls all the time. And yeah, it seems like sometimes things will follow us home. And it happened to a good friend of mine named Mitch, and he was out on a homicide scene, and he kneeled down in front of the body at one point and just said, as a mental exercise, "Tell me what happened to you." You know, just trying to kind of get into the right frame of mind to figure out what happened. And when he did, the lights went out in the room where he was at. And so he's in there in the car.
Hang on, we're all having our sip because we're listening. Go ahead.
Well, I'll try not to gross you out. But
No, I'm getting popcorn now, man.
this
I'm
is
getting
great.
yeah.
You're talking to homicide guys here. Keep them coming. Keep them coming.
So he's alone in the room with this poor, unfortunate person who's been killed. And, you know, for him, it seemed like the lights were out for an hour. But, you know, eventually they popped back on, and he came out and said, "Hey, did you guys notice anything?" Because we were out on the side of the street, probably having choir practice, as it were. We were out on the street, and we're like, "No, we didn't see anything." And so, you know, he didn't think much more about it. And we went on, you know, investigating the case. Well, after that, all sorts of strange things started to happen in his home. And he didn't really recognize everything right away. Just the power would go out in one room only, or his alarm clock wouldn't go off even though it was set. And then he had this dog, this pug named the Dude, and the Dude started to act really weird. The Dude would act like he's watching somebody walk across the room when nobody's there, and he would look up in a corner and bark. And so just all these weird things happened. Well, Mitch started to date a new girl at about the same time, and it turned out she was an intuitive. And so as soon as she walked in the house, she said, "You've got a ghost here." And Mitch is like, "Oh boy." And so just kind of through the process of elimination, she started to talk and, you know, ask some questions. And by process of elimination, they figured out that it was this girl that he had knelt down in front of and said, you know, "Tell me what happened to you." She had latched onto him and followed him home. And so, like, I mean, that raises the hair on the back of my neck, because Chris, you're an old homicide guy. How many homicides have you gone to? You know?
Yeah, a couple.
Yeah. So did anybody follow you home?
Well, you know, I can't say they've actually come through the door. I'm sure they've been in the car.
Yeah.
But usually I'll boot them out. I have had some pretty weird experiences, though, like the next guy, right? I mean, I think we all have, right, Mike? I mean, just
absolutely.
I went into a garage one time, and when we got there, patrol didn't tell us where the victim was, and you know, they just said, "Yeah, he's in the garage," but I didn't know where in the garage. And as I walked through the door, I opened the door, and boom, I hit something, and I looked behind the door, and there he was, swinging away. And I was like, "Oh, that's going to leave a mark." And those are the kind of things that raise your hair. And I closed the door, and I walked outside, and I said, "Hey, thanks, you know, appreciate that." And they were all laughing. It turned out to be an unfortunate situation. It wasn't a homicide. But,
this is amazing. So Trish, are you a lifelonger from the community that you live in right now?
Yes.
So I want to know if you've been into the opium dens of historic 25th Street, and if you've gotten down in and done the ghost tours there and other kinds of things, because this needs to be a part of your YouTube channel, especially this time of year.
Yes. So I have done a few tours in some of the buildings there. I actually,
and folks, we're talking about Ogden, Utah, where Trish lives.
Yep.
And there's a historic street there that in the 30s and 40s was so dangerous that even Al Capone visited once when the railroad was running big and strong. and Chris Al Capone is quoted as saying, "This town is even too tough for me." And he got on a train and got out. It was filled with opium dens and bars and fights. Crazy place. So Trish, tell us about the opium dens.
Yeah. So one of my friends, I'm trying to think of what his business is called. It's a making sense kind of business. He makes like soaps and stuff, but he's got a basement down there, and it's pretty creepy. But most of the tunnels and stuff that they say they have, they're all like bricked up. So I've never actually been in there, but I've been into some of the basements. I've been into the Union Station. I've done ghost tours in the Union Station, and that's fun. Like I've been into their vaults, and I've done quite a few events at the Union Station. So I've been there alone in the dark, and so I've had weird things happen at the Union Station to me and my kids a few times. So it's fun. I don't know.
So Paul, Paul, have you processed any of the transients that have found those places to sleep and they passed in the night, or homicides on the street where you've been down underneath and you've gotten into some of those areas?
Never for a crime, but we've done some. We used to go down there to do training, some photography training on 25th Street. And Joe Chesser, right? You remember him?
Yes, I know Joe well.
Yeah, he used to be the evidence custodian for Ogden, and then he came over to the county. And so he went with me one time, and since old Joe knew a ton of people, he arranged for us to go down in one of the basements, and you could still see the individual stalls that had been where the prostitutes were. There wasn't a nice room. You just had a little closet with a bed in it, and you could just see where all those stalls used to be. And then, of course, at the top of 25th Street is the Lomond Hotel. I guess it's called something different now, but that place is haunted. There's some stories in my book, Fingerprints and Phantoms, about the Lomond Hotel. I was talking to a security guard who worked there one night, and he wasn't there anymore. He was at a different hotel, but he told me that when he was at the Lomond, he was walking across the lobby one night, and up ahead, he saw an older woman dressed in kind of out of time clothes. The clothing didn't really look like it belonged in the period, but you don't really think too much about it. And he goes, and she wasn't really looking at him or anything, and he just walked on past. But then he thought, oh, it's late. I should see if she needs some help or anything. And he turns around to ask her if she needs help, and she's gone. And it's a big lobby, but it has a marble floor. He would have heard footsteps or anything, and he hadn't been past her too long before he turned around, and she was gone. So yeah, there's a lot of stories from the Lomond.
That is fantastic.
Perfume too. You always smell perfume all of a sudden at the Lomond Hotel, and it's just random old lady perfume. It's really cool.
This is awesome. I want to pull up Trish's YouTube channel if we can, fellas, and then let's give her a shout out. I got note back, Trisha, that people are subscribing, so we hope that it's helpful.
You guys.
I also saw, and I don't know, our good friend, New York Police Department Detective Duty Ron is on, and thanks for that kind donation. I'm actually going to be on Ron's show tomorrow night, and how much we love and appreciate our brother in blue there. So a shout out to the NYPD guys and to Duty Ron. Make sure you're going to Moms, Jeans, and Crime Scenes, folks. Give Trish a try, and Trish, we hope you'll come back and see us again sometime.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for letting me come. I love you guys. You guys are so amazing to me.
Oh, you need to get out more, but thank you so much.
You guys are awesome.
You're very kind. What are you covering next, Trish? I'm sorry, Mike.
Go
What
ahead.
are you covering next? What story are you covering next?
Alexis Rasmussen from North Ogden. So I've been kind of reaching out to some of her friends because her story is so sad, and she kind of got a bad reputation from it. So I want to talk to some of her friends. They're sharing some stories with me about her to kind of just make you love her, because she didn't really get that in the media when she disappeared. So yeah, that's what
that'll be great. We'll look forward to seeing that. Thank you, Trish. And Paul, thank you so much. What's next on the docket for you? You're working as a CSI investigator in a county of nearly 300,000 people. Personally, I just really thank you. I remember when that unit that you work in was formed, so it's really fun to meet someone who's been with it for such a long time. What's next for you?
Well, I'm pretty busy right now with work and everything. I also teach up at Weber State as an adjunct professor. I was continuing my education a little bit, so I haven't had a lot of time to write anything fun, but I need to get back and start collecting these stories again. I hope to get a sequel to Fingerprints and Phantoms pretty soon. So I just got to get and doing the fun stuff again.
Okay, Paul, quick question. You ready?
Yep.
Splatter or spatter?
Well, the proper scientific term is spatter. Splatter's a sound, but spatter's what you're looking at with blood.
Everybody in the PE family, pay attention. Good job. Thank you for teaching. We appreciate that.
Come back in the chat box after you hang up and just redefine those so everybody gets that, because it's always fun to listen to people say, "I saw blood splatter on the wall." So,
yeah, that's not my forte, but I know the lingo enough. So, and
I got to tell you, here's my only spooky story for tonight. Is I, as a young officer down on the street, I went down into the opioid pits, and they were still a number of buildings that were connected, so you could walk from room to room. And much of that was near the sidewalk area where they were. But I remember one particular night going down in, and I had investigated enough homicides by that point in my career that I had this triggering moment, Chris. I tasted iron in my mouth from the humid air underneath. And Paul, what do you think that meant?
Blood.
There you go. It was blood, and it was a suicide down underneath. But before I ever even got close, I actually tasted that iron in my mouth, and I've never forgotten that. Whenever I have any kind of like a bloody nose or anything, it takes me back to that night on 25th Street. So thanks so much to both of you for being here. We hope you'll come back. And Chris, if we could, let's just make a little bit of a transition. But I think you got a couple things to cover, and we got one of the guys in the back office we want to bring in, don't we?
Yeah, I think we've got Tim. He's going to come in and give us a shout out. Mr. Tim, what do you got for us?
Exciting stuff. Didn't expect to be on tonight, but I appreciate the cameo. It's a big night for you two, and especially Mike, is he's released the pre-order of his new book, Deceived. So we wanted to do a little bit of a giveaway for those people who pre-order it. So you can actually pre-order it directly from the Profiling Evil website, and you get an entry for buying or for pre-ordering it. And then if you share your purchase on social media, and to make it easy on Mike and Chris, tag Profiling Evil on your shared message so that we can see it. And then also make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube. We'll be going through all of those pre-orders, all of those tags and so forth that you have pre-ordered it. And we'll hook you up with some Profiling Evil swag from the store. So we're really excited to bring that to you. So thanks for letting me interrupt. I'm going to jump out of here.
Thanks a lot, Tim. And make sure you're hitting Tim's channel from time to time. Tim, what is it?
Just Tim Sessions on YouTube. I explore
just Tim Sessions? Are you kidding me?
If you want to know the cool things in the mountains around my house, go see Tim's YouTube channel. Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
You guys are too kind. Good luck.
Deliver a chicken sandwich, would you? Okay. What else we got going, Michael? This is a great show tonight.
Yeah, already. This is a lot of fun tonight. I want to call out Lisa Marie for that kind donation, and Sergeant Leffler. Thank you for that kind donation.
And folks, Michael, on that, you know what? We couldn't do it without these good folks for those types of donations. I mean, we're very grateful to all of you who support us here in this channel. And we hope that we're able to bring you the type of content that really lifts you up, and you feel better after you hang up the channel with us for the day. Where our goal here is to bring you just bring you good stuff. And that leads us right into our next guest, who I'm extremely excited.
Yeah, before you announce who that is, I just want to shout out to a couple people: Linda Petrovich, Mama Shan Shan again, Stacy on the case, Maureen Hannon, Four Sons mom, insightful. Gosh, so many of you. It's just so good to see you. Thank you for continuing to support us and come in. It's really fun to spend choir practice with you. And this has been an amazing day. We are so excited about our next guest that Chris is going to introduce.
Yep. So let's bring Sergeant John Lamb in here. And there he is, technologically advanced to the 21st century away. So let me tell everybody, I'm going to do the introduction here because John and I worked together many, many years ago. And he was in homicide before me. And he's been not only a dear friend, but he's an amazing human being. Mike has known him for a very long time. In fact, you got one of Mike's books back in the day, didn't you, Johnny?
Yeah, we're talking about back in 2004.
Holy cow. Well, thanks, John.
Wow.
I appreciate you buying that.
Ago. That's a long time.
No, I actually shoplifted it.
Oh, perfect.
I mean,
Hopefully you didn't get it off.
This is why John's
off of a
choir
victim.
Actually, I've got your book right here
So-
on my shelf, but I'm not going to point the camera at it because I don't do this often.
Yeah, I'm glad you don't have any gum in your mouth and that you're just hanging on to the phone.
We had to
I
talk
can do
John
that.
into this. By the way, John is a very prolific writer. He has written how many books, John?
A total of 7 books.
Seven, yeah.
Seven.
One of them is the very first one is the one that's featured right now, San Diego Specters. And that's a collection of ghost stories, most real, some I debunked throughout San Diego. And then I wrote 6 murder mysteries after that, one published by a small publisher and then the other 5 published by a division of Penguin. So I actually had about a 10-year career writing paperback original mysteries for one of the biggest houses in New York.
Awesome. And what was the other series? The Teddy Bear series, right?
The Teddy Bear series, and yes, I know more about teddy bears than probably an adult male should admit. We aren't even going to get into the number I have because I do believe that's probably prima facie evidence of mental instability. But I wrote these books about a retired homicide detective who learns to make teddy bears. And one of the taglines was from mayhem to mohair. And I was fortunate enough to write these books, and they were, reasonably popular, and they were fun to tell these stories and also share a little bit of like teddy bear history. So that was fun to do.
Now, are these teddy bears at all like that Chucky the doll, John, or tell me about them?
No. Like, for instance, the first book, the entire plot device, or as Hitchcock would refer to it, the MacGuffin, was a teddy bear produced shortly after the sinking of the Titanic. And it was produced by a German toy maker by the name of Steiff, very famous toy maker. And it was known as the Mourning Bear. And the last time one of these Mourning Bears went on auction, and we'll say it was like 2003 or 2004, it sold for the equivalent of $156,000.
Wow.
So, I mean, Chris and I have seen people murdered over 2 tacos. So, $156,000 is plenty good reason to commit murder, and to be able to tell an intriguing story, sharing history. And so in that regard, I share a lot of histories in these books. In another book, it has to do with 5 generations forward of Teddy Ruxpin. That one was called The Clockwork Teddy. And the husband and wife, unlike so many murder mysteries, these are called cozy murder mysteries, which means I don't have blood spatter. Thank you for having him clarify that. The sort of there are some books that are written that are so graphic they impress me as being fake.
Yeah.
And these books feature a husband and wife team who, she was a teddy bear artist. He's learning to make teddy bears. They bring two entirely different skill sets together to solve the murder. And they love each other. He's not an alcoholic wreck. So many of these books, the alcoholic, barely functioning detective who can't find his car keys but can somehow pull it together to unravel some Byzantine mystery. We know that's completely bogus. And that the best homicide detectives I knew were emotionally healthy and were operating on, all cylinders they had.
That's fantastic. So, Michael, I had the privilege of working with this fine gentleman here for many years, and I know that he was also one of the tour guides in San Diego, right, Johnny, for a long
I
time?
actually owned the business. After I left police work, I owned a ghost tour business. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That is fantastic. Let's
Yeah.
talk ghost stories in San
he's got some
Diego for a
great
minute.
story.
All right, well,
Great
let's-
story.
And then offline, I want the skeletons on McDonough, okay?
How much time you have? All right.
Well, that's why I said offline, because there's not
I'll
enough time
just
tonight.
I'll just send you the file. You can bid. Anyway, let's start in San Diego with like the most famous haunted place in San Diego, and that's the Whaley House. And it's right in Old Town San Diego. It's known worldwide as a haunted place. The problem with it is that there's so much in the way of people searching for ghosts that they are very often very mundane episodes are confused for ghost activity. I was present, didn't see it, but I was present on one of my tours when one of my people attending apparently saw an apparition. And one of the most frequently seen apparitions at the Whaley House is the Whaley's dog, a black Scottish terrier named Dolly.
Dolly.
Yes, Dolly. And Dolly has been seen. And we were at the tour, and I was talking about the storied history of the Whaley House. And one of the attendees was looking off into the yard behind where we were talking, into the dark. And I mentioned Dolly, and he said, so a dog, huh? I said, yeah. And he said, well, what kind of dog? I said, well, what kind did you see? Because, it's obviously you saw something. Because prior to this, the guy had been telling his girlfriend, this is idiotic. I'm really doing this for you, And so she says, what did you see? And he says, well, I thought I saw a black Scottish terrier over there, but I can't see it now. And I said, yeah, that's Dolly. And so he goes, no, you're making that up. I go, well, how did you manage to guess the dog? I mean, if you want, you can look at my book and see I've written about this. And so, he was very chastened after that. And his girlfriend for the rest of the tour will walk along and nudge him and go, woof, woof. So I didn't see Dolly, but very clearly he did. And this was a very strident unbeliever.
Wow. So I got to know, because, I live in the countryside where sometimes people say they see Bigfoot, and I haven't seen him yet. I keep looking, haven't seen evidence of it. I keep looking. But tell me, when you take these tours out and you're walking around San Diego after dark, I don't know. I keep thinking back to when we were junior high kids and we were spooking each other in the woods. How much is learned behavior and how much is the real thing?
That's an excellent question. And here's one of the things we know. If people go in with expectations, one of the things that researchers have discovered is that a heightened state of awareness, being on the lookout, being in code yellow or code orange, you aren't going to see anything because you're too oriented to reality. The way people customarily have ghostly encounters, and they can be auditory, they can be apparition, they can be aromas, is when they're relaxed and not expecting it. So if somebody tells me, and I would hear this when I gave the ghost tours, you would inevitably get, Trent, Jason, and Lyle, all 19, and it's, dude, like, we went to the cemetery and we saw the specter, and like he said, who has disturbed our rest? Yeah, well, can you hang on? Let me get a pen. Let me write this one down. A ghost encounter doesn't happen that way. You aren't expecting it, and when you see it, as Paul described the encounter in the hotel, you think it's a mundane episode until something happens to alert the brain. And usually whatever it is that alerts the brain is also what terminates the event. So, but that's the Whaley House. And a lot of it, some of it's a learned behavior. Some of it, look, we know what ghost phenomena does, and there are patterns. And so you can pretty much tell when somebody's imagining that they're yanking your chain.
So the Whaley House.
I was raised in Salt Lake City, Chris, and one of the things during Halloween was to always go up to the city cemetery to Emo's grave, and I always found that when I was with a group of buddies, up to a lot of no good at 2:00 in the morning near Emo's grave, somebody always saw something, and we always got pretty spooked.
And I guess my question is, what sort of spirits put in an appearance? Spooks or 90 proof?
That's interesting.
And in fact, but I will tell you this about cemeteries: where we see cemeteries desecrated, you very often will see a host of paranormal episodes, and that brings us to a location that Chris and I were both familiar with in Oceanside, the Hunter Steakhouse, which is built over the site of the Buena Vista Cemetery. And that's not spooktail. That is historical society research on my part. See, I'm a history fanatic, and to do the ghost, to investigate ghosts, as I did at the time, it allowed me the opportunity to dig up, probably a bad verb for a cemetery, obscure history. And the Buena Vista Cemetery sat on that hillside. And when Interstate 5 came through in about 1969, they were supposed to have moved the bodies, but they didn't. And the story told by some of the workmen is that the gravestones were broken up and now constitute part of the freeway roadbed. So, right next to the interstate was a restaurant, it had a basement. And how often did we go there, Chris, for alarm activation?
Yeah, so 1172 all the time.
Break in.
Yeah, it's at Vista Way and the 5 and the 78 right there, right on the corner.
It was.
Okay, you're breaking up a little, John. Hang on for a second. But
tell me about that place while we give John's phone a chance to catch up here.
Yep. So the Hunter Steakhouse is at Vista Way in 78. And all the time that alarm would go off, all the time. And, now that, Harry's back here, let's see if we can get him back in. Okay,
yeah,
you're back.
I'm here.
Oh, okay, so you left
apparition.
That's all right. Apparition cut you loose. So I said Vista Way 78, Hunter Steakhouse, pick it up.
Yeah. Old patrol cop told me the place was haunted. And he said that's the reason why there were alarm activations. And he told me there was a cemetery underneath there. So when I decided I was going to write my book, I figured I'm not going to be sly about this. I'm going to go in and ask the manager, hey, is this place haunted? And I did. And what we call a knock and talk. And he says, well, I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but if there's such a thing as ghosts, this place is haunted. So I'll go over real quickly all of the things that happened there. Employees have seen full figure and partial figure apparitions.
Wow.
They have seen, they have heard rapping on the ceiling above the women's bathroom. Now, what's above the women's restroom is a locked storage area for the alcohol. There's nobody up there. Faucets turn on by themselves, toilets flush by themselves, which are all very common poltergeist activity. Anybody who's worked there much more than 3 weeks, there's an alcove, a food server where they go. At times they will hear somebody whisper their name right next to their ear. Yeah. And there are a couple of them who said, yeah, I quit that day. Because I say, this stuff can't hurt you. And they go, well, you know what? I don't need disembodied figures. People will feel themselves touched. A lot of the activity happens in the basement bar where people have seen like liquor bottles slide across the shelf. The rheostat operated light switch will dim and then turn back on. Cold spots. Now, cold spots are very common with hauntings. And when you walk into a cold spot, and these are actually can be physically measured, and you can see a drop of between 15 to 20 degrees in a cold spot.
Wow.
And people will say, oh, well, that could happen anywhere. Well, let me ask you a question. It's never happened at my house. How about yours? You ever walked into a cold spot and you go, whoa. But cold spots do happen in haunted places. So Hunter Steakhouse, when the book came out, one of the local TV stations wanted to do a thing before Halloween. So we're in the dining room and the reporter is asking me about the Amityville Horror, which was a complete fraud. I mean, they did it basically to get out of, they bought too much house and the furnace didn't work, and there was no Amityville Horror. And so she said, so you're trying to tell me the Amityville Horror was fake? And the moment she said that, every light in that portion of the restaurant switched off. So we're in the dark and she squeaks, oh, and so I'm laughing, and the cameraman he keeps the camera rolling. He's a good cameraman. So we come to find out that somehow or another we've tripped a breaker just for that room. Now, how we did that, we don't know. But the reporter says, let's lose that first, let's lose that intro. And he says, oh no, this is what we're leading the story with, of the lights switching off and you reacting with terror. So,
when you were a tour guide, did you have a lot of groups from overseas that would come in, and did you ever have any funny experiences with them?
No, I didn't have very many, not very many in the way of tour guides, because in some respects, that's really a lot of the people that were coming into San Diego were Asian, and they don't have the same cultural view of ghosts that we do. That's
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to everybody out there, if you've had the chance to go to London and do the Jack the Ripper tour and the ghost associated with Ripper, that's pretty interesting. But I don't know, Chris, any thoughts?
Not on the Jack the Ripper tour. I just know, I followed John long enough to know that he's got some amazing stories. And I just, before we keep going here, I just want to give a shout out to Zelda and Dr. Latrina. Thank you so very much. We're very grateful. And Carla Hussey, thank you so much for those donations. We are so grateful to each and every one of you. John, have you had any experiences in your time that absolutely just put the hair up on the back of your neck?
Well, there was one that happened while I was on duty.
Okay.
I came up on it afterwards, but basically I was by this point patrol sergeant, and a call gets forwarded to the watch commander's office. And there's a young woman who begins describing things happening in her house. She doesn't want to use the word poltergeist or haunted, but that's what she's describing. Appliances turning on by themselves in the middle of the night, TV turns on, items go missing and then reappear in the same place, toilets flush by themselves, cold spots, they can hear footfalls in the house. So, but she's like studiously avoiding the words ghost and haunted. So I said, so are you telling me you got a poltergeist? And she breaks into tears. Oh, you think I'm an idiot? Nah, actually, no, I don't. You know, your lucky night you got me on the phone. I said, look, I can't leave the office right now. Let me send an officer out to at least calm you down. So I go out into the parking lot. The units were just clearing to go 10-8. And I grab one of them. I go, you need to go down, give them the address. And it was like, by the way, this house was like 3 houses away from the Hunter Steakhouse. So do the geographic connection. And I said, you need to go down and calm these women down. And as I lay it out to him, his lip just curls more and more. And he says in a scornful voice, are you kidding me? Are you sending me on a ghost call? And I said, go protect and serve, man. They're frightened. Okay, calm them down. I know you're probably vague in the concept, but the badge means
sounds like Ghostbusters. Sounds like Ghostbusters.
So protect and serve. I'll be down in a little bit. So I arrive about 10 minutes later. The woman, her female roommate, and this cop are standing in the front yard staring nervously at the house. I go, what's up? She said, you aren't going to believe what happened. You know, he was carrying a micro cassette recorder. We didn't have body cameras back then. He turns the micro cassette recorder on. The woman is explaining patiently what's been happening in the house. And he says, lady, you need to grow up. There's no such thing as ghosts. No sooner does he say that, on the tape, you hear crash. And then you hear the women start to scream, and you can hear something happening. He's trying to get his gun out of his gun belt. Oh my. I said, well, what were you going to? I said, well, are you trying to get your gun out? It was a ghost. I don't know what it was, but it came from the ceiling. By the way, it was a 1-story house. So, and it is another form of poltergeist activity, a sudden explosive blast of sound. And I've heard it referred to as the grand piano slam. Wow. So I said, well, let's go and look in the attic. He said, you can go look in the attic. I ain't going back in there. He said, yeah, you're going to come with me. I mean, come on, this stuff can't hurt you. No. So I looked in the attic. There's nothing up here, man. I said, so do we want to reconsider your scorn? And he turns around to the women and says, oh, I'm really sorry for saying that. And so fast forward 6 months ahead. Loud party call, same address. We got 3 surfer dudes living there.
Surfer dudes. I love it. Yeah. John, you're right out of Central Casting, buddy. That's what I love about you. And this is choir practice right here. 3 surfer dudes. Practice. Boom. Go ahead. Thank you, Karen Olson. We love you.
And so, it's a big party. So I pound on the door, and he opens the door. And I don't know his name, but, they all talk, yeah, dude. And I said, yeah, you need to turn the music down, dude. And so he says, well, I'll try. I said, well, do better than try. And in the meantime, hey, what's it like living in a haunted house? And this guy's jaw just unhinges. He goes, dude, you know about this place? And I said, yeah, I was here about 6 months ago. And there were some women living here, and they were scared. They said things would go missing and stuff would turn on. And I said, does it bother you? He says, dude, I've had roommates where if something disappeared, they didn't return it. I'll take this guy any day. And so he'd rather have a ghost than a bad roommate. But yeah.
Hey, John, so let's put Kristen's comment back up here for a minute. She says, I can't think of the place, but I had a friend tell me some crazy stories about a mansion he and buddies were jointly financing together. Once all their clothes were perfectly folded all the way to the ceiling. Have you seen? Thanks, Kristen, and thanks for that kind donation. What's the wackiest thing or the funniest thing you've seen these Parisians do? And Aloe Vera, I want to just say thank you. We love John as well.
I can't think of any. Well, I'd have to say that the event with the reporter was certainly funny. I've never seen folded clothes, although that is a form of phenomena that has been reported. I've done immense amount of reading on ghost research, and so when I hear somebody say, "Yeah, clothing folded up like that," absolutely, that does happen, but I've never seen it. So,
Interesting. We've got a picture of John here back in the day, Mike, don't we?
Uh-oh.
Up in here. Oh,
Holy smokes, he was just a boy back then.
Whoa.
I had hair.
Yeah. No. Okay. Well, let's see how many Okay. For our viewers here. Okay. For our viewers, chime in the chat here. What do you see in this picture? Let's see how astute your observation skills are. Okay. Code 33. Go ahead. Chime in. Our PE family. So, John, we love doing this. We have the greatest viewers. We absolutely love.
Oh, you do.
They are fantastic, and we absolutely love them. Okay, so what? Oh, Zelda. Okay, where do you see it? There we go. Where do you see it? Where do you see it? Yeah, fish for something.
Yeah, they are fishing for something right there.
Yeah.
Chip's helmet.
What kind of bait are you using?
Yep. Oh, can you zoom
There
in?
we go.
There he is. There he is. John, tell us the story. And that's our brother Dave. Dave passed away. He's in the Chips helmet. We love Dave Grant, one of our dearest friends. Love him to death.
Dave Grant was a member of the human race's natural aristocracy.
Yes. Yeah.
He was brave. He was funny. He was gallant. And in fact, what I said during that picture is it looks like he's reeling, getting the body. I asked him, "What kind of bait are you using?" Because there was.
You're a sick puppy. I love you.
Sorry. You go to these scenes. What happened was actually the other detective, that's Sheila. Her name was Hancock at the time.
Yep.
And we had been at Police Magazine in Carlsbad. They were trying to set up a cover with some sort of staged murder scene. And the call came out. They said, "You got to go out to the San Luis Riverbed. We got a body there." And so they followed us out there and took pictures of it. And as it turned out, I mean, it's supposed to be this dramatic murder picture, but actually this guy, like, where you're looking at, there was a lot of sand that was quarried there near the San Luis River. And what we believe happened was that he was walking by the river and it collapsed and he fell in. And the San Luis River at that point, the mud on the bottom is exceptionally gooey, and he just drowned. And so, but it made for a great picture. Yeah, that's me when I still had brown hair, and 1986.
Couple of weekends ago.
Yeah.
Couple of weekends ago.
You know what? Hey, John, I'm wondering if maybe there's a few questions people might have for you.
Yeah.
And we'll take those and pop them up. But again, how many years have you worked in law enforcement now, including time as a gun-toting cop, and now even continuing in CSI work?
Well, let's see, if we do the 4 years as a military policeman, 18 years as a California peace officer, and I've worked at the Harrisonburg Police Department in Virginia, which is where I've lived since 2004. I run their evidence room there for 5 years, so 5, 9, 27, 28 years.
Yeah, at least.
And I've never regretted a moment of it. These are the finest times of my life, and it's been an honor to serve.
We are so blessed to have been in a job that every day you go to the office, it's a different set of challenges. Vicki Dodd, thank you for that kind donation. I worked at a hospital when a child was in ICU. The lights in the empty rooms would come on and off. Phones would ring. Medication carts would be on the elevator with nobody going up and down. Holy cow.
Oh, yeah. And hospitals are, my reading has been is that hospitals are very haunted places.
So Sergeant Leffler wants to know if you're going to write any more books.
At this point, the ugly realities of the publishing industry are that nobody wanted my murder mysteries anymore. I'll just tell you the reason why is that my series was dropped right about the time 50 Shades of Grey became popular.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got better things to do than to write that.
So Sterling has a question.
Yeah.
Sterling has a question. Corona Del Mar Hotel. Know anything about it?
Coronado, the Del Coronado Hotel in Coronado, yes. It has some famous stories associated with the haunted room. All I will say is that the current haunted room was not the original haunted room. If you pick up my book, I could get into like painful detail here because I'm a little pedantic in this regard. If you want to pick up my book, there's a chapter on the Hotel Del where I just basically debunk the haunted room. It's now there may be ghosts in the hotel, and it's connected with the suicide that actually didn't occur anywhere near where the haunted room is. It occurred on the steps leading to the beach, and which is now an outside dining area. So I do know about the Hotel Del Coronado. In fact, I was featured probably back in 2002 on a TV show on the History Channel, where I offered my thought that it's a wonderful story, but I don't really believe the room is haunted. See, I believe in ghosts, but I haven't checked my common sense at the door.
Interesting. How about one question from Amber E is how about the Queen Mary? Any insight into the Queen Mary?
I've never investigated the Queen Mary, but I have heard stories about people, primarily auditory phenomena. But again, you're in a metal ship. I just don't know. I'd have to beg ignorance on that.
Okay, so Sandy Lee has a question. Said, John, can we meet for dinner sometime? I would love to talk to you. Any plans on coming to North Carolina?
At this time, no. I'm literally 40-hour-a-week job, and my wife does have some health issues, which precludes traveling, and so. I am here, and I'm having a fun time working at the police station. It makes me feel young. The young cops I work with sometimes wonder what planet I've arrived from. But no plans to go to North Carolina. But if I do get back into the ghost writing stuff, I think it would be fun to do so because it's a fun topic, and boy, you meet some interesting people.
Yeah, most definitely. And you're a very humble guy, and yes, you are.
You are.
You are. You've been through so much. I mean, I've always just thought our friendship was just fantastic. But more importantly, I know what kind of person you are, and I know what you've been through. So go ahead.
And I second that, Chris, and I think both of you will understand precisely what I'm saying, as will those viewers who've worn the badge. You learn the full measure of a human being when you're out and you're about to handle something that could be life-threatening. Yeah. And you get a good measure of who they are. And Chris, the times we were together, it was like we worked in tandem perfectly. It was like, you know what I was thinking. I knew what you were thinking. And boy, I knew what your dog was thinking.
Yeah. So have you heard of the Pfizer Hotel in Milwaukee?
No, I haven't. So
last story, and then we're going to have you back again. Would you come back again, John, if you have time? Okay, so last story. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have Skylar come on right after this, Mike, if that's okay, and to tell us about another promotion that we've got coming. to talk about. So here's the story. Michael Ziegler. And go. Family show. Family show.
Family show. It's about 11:30 at night. Chris is out with his dog Irk. Chris goes out on a 11:51, which is pedestrian check in San Diego, on Michael Ziegler, a well-known meth freak. I rolled to cover Chris, and Ziegler is amped to the gills on meth. I mean, he is just fidgeting, and he knows that neither of us are going to give him a particularly cheerful listening. So Chris says, let me just look at your eyes. I want to see your pupils. Oh, come on, you guys, come on. And then he suddenly just bolts and hits Chris in the chest, shoves Chris back into his cop car. So, and then he begins running down the alley, and I begin chasing him with my PR-24. And as I'm running after him, closing in on him, this streak of brown passes me. It's Irk. I mean, I'm surprised we didn't hear a sonic boom go. And Irk hits Ziegler the first time and spins him around. And now what I'm about to tell you is the Lord's own truth. I'm not embellishing this. It spins Ziegler around, and Ziegler then runs full bore into a telephone pole. It looks like something from a Warner Brothers Roadrunner cartoon. Yep. He hits it and goes twang, and he stands there. And I mean, I'm transfixed. I mean, I should be grabbing him, but I'm trying not to laugh. Irk then snaps at him. Ziegler decides to run again, and he runs full bore into a cinder block wall. At which point he collapses and begins trying to kick Irk. And every time he does, Irk jumps out of the way and bites him. And I'm laughing so hard, I'm going, Ziegler, stop. Just stop. If you stop kicking the dog, he won't bite you. And so by this time, Chris has arrived, and Chris is laughing too, and we're trying to give commands, but it's, I mean, I guess you had to be there. It is awfully funny. And finally, as we pull the dog off, Ziegler looks it up and says, that dog is from hell. I mean, it was like something from a bad science fiction movie. And so I don't, perfect. Oh, by the way, he began with
perfect segue,
perfect ending to a spooky night. John, thanks so much, man.
Thanks so much for being here. Thank you.
You are the best. We'll talk to you soon. Oh man, I love choir.
Is he a character?
He's awesome. Yeah. And this is the funnest part about choir practice is there are just no rules, but so fun. Hey, let's take just 1 minute.
Absolutely love John.
And let's bring in Skylar to talk about this promotion, Chris. And then as soon as he's done, I want to just play a little bit of a video and introduce our next guest. And before I do that, Vicki Dodd, thank you again. Nicole Marie, thank you so much. And we just had Zelda again. Sorry we didn't get to biker scarves getting caught in the spokes, but it would have been a good one. So we'll come back. Skylar, why don't you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, so just basically exactly what Tim was talking about earlier. Mike's book came out on pre-order today. If some of you caught it on the Dr. Phil show, it was a great episode of Dr. Phil. What a tragic event, but what a happy ending for a lot of those victims. Anyway, Mike's book just came out for pre-order, as you can see. Thanks, Tyler, for pulling that up. Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. So we're doing a giveaway. We haven't quite decided what we're giving away, but it's not going to be something small. It's going to be something fun, hoodies. We don't know yet. We're going to do something fun. And the way to enter is we're going to count all the pre-orders as one entry. And then once you pre-ordered the book, if you share your pre-order on social media and tag Profiling Evil, you will get an entry for each social media platform that you share it on. And then the one requirement for all of that is you have to be subscribed on YouTube. So again, pre-order the book, you get an entry, and then each social media platform that you put it on and tag Profiling Evil, you will get another entry on that as well. So yeah, we'll announce a winner next Monday. So next choir practice. So between now and then, go at it, and then we'll probably be doing some more giveaways in the next few weeks, especially if we can reach the 50,000 subscriber mark. That's a big one that we're shooting for, and we appreciate this community. I mean, this is, a lot of you know, and Mike has said it many times, it's like pulling teeth to get him to talk about his accomplishments, and Chris too. And so we wouldn't have this without all of you. So we appreciate all of you and everything that we have. So again, pre-order that book. We're excited for it. It's going to be fantastic, and thank you all for being here. So I'm going to jump out.
Thanks, Skylar.
Thank you, Skylar.
You're
And
the
Darcy
best.
Ann, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Today has been quite a day, Chris, and I am so excited about our next guest, but I want to start it off with this presentation. Oh, not yet. I can see in the back room we're not ready. So, folks, we had the opportunity. It was sooner than we expected, but Dr. Phil called us after Chris and I appeared on Dr. Phil about a month ago, I guess, Chris. We were last on Dr. Phil, and his staff heard about the investigation and the book that I was preparing. And most importantly, they heard that we have been able to bring together the victims in this case after 30 years. And Dr. Phil's team graciously invited me out to meet these wonderful survivors of this horrendous cult 30 years later. And it was rather emotional at times, but we're just going to play a couple of clips that Dr. Phil released today.
Former Detective Mike King joined us now.
Well, the back office is in big trouble because that's not the video I told them to show. And with that, I want to bring in a special guest. Natalie, can you please come in? And folks, let me introduce you to Natalie. I don't know if I'm going to be able to use your pseudonym or synonym or whatever the right word is. But folks, this beautiful woman, until last week, the last time I saw her, she was 6 years old and the survivor of a cult that we had just raided in 1991. Natalie, thank you for coming on.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me. And you can use my pseudonym if you want to. There's also Kerrigan, Natalie. I answer to many names.
Well, folks, I'll tell you, we're going to talk about Kerrigan and how this name came about in just a minute then. But Natalie, tell everybody about the community that you were raised in up until the day that the arrests occurred and the raid occurred. And then we're just going to kind of explore what life's been like.
Okay. I'm struggling to figure out exactly where to begin, only because after watching the show and after we kind of all got ramped up and started talking about it, I felt like we could have kept going for hours and hours. Like there was just so much that we didn't even get into. And even watching it today, I started feeling like a weird sense of, I thought I'd be nervous or upset. And I had this weird sense of like let down in a strange way of like, but there's so much more to the story. There's so much more that happened. There's there's just like, who wants to listen to this? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like I just needed to talk more. I don't know what that was about, but I was like, oh, well, thanks for inviting me to talk more about it. Because I don't know. But I'm not exactly sure where to start. So
yeah, well, let's go back, folks. In 1991, Natalie was a child in a cult that was in northern Utah, was sexually abusing children. The belief system of the self-proclaimed leader of this group was not only a polygamous belief system that all of the women should either belong to him or specific men within the group, which was rather large. Some suggest even as high as 120 people. They were living in a communal area, a compound. And this belief system, this self-proclaimed religious leader, while he was developing this belief system, Chris was mysteriously also sneaking into neighboring cities and purchasing prostitutes, and his perversions continued to get completely out of control, to the point that he then started to instruct the women that they should be having sexual relationships with each other. And as perversions generally go, those perversions intensified. And before long, he received revelation that the adults should all start having sexual relationships with the children. And Natalie, I've indicated before how incredibly, how many sexual assaults happen to the children. And sometimes I don't even believe the numbers myself, but maybe you could just shed a little light on what that was like and what the numbers really looked like for these 32 children.
Well, I think it's difficult. It's a difficult number to quantify because, and I kind of tried to run into this with the producers at Dr. Phil as well. It was such a part of our everyday lives that if you wanted to separate it into charges, I don't even know how you would begin, because it was mildly inappropriate all the way to, you know, kind of horrifically, like maybe the worst rapes you can think of kind of thing. So it was depending on who you talk to and what everybody's individual story was. So, you know, you would wake up and the very first thing you had to do was think about what kind of beautiful dress are you going to put on? How are you going to treat the men in your life or your household so that they feel flattered and they feel comfortable? You know what I mean? And there was, you know, just inappropriate touching, caressing, language, kissing, like it was just kind of all of the time. And so it was very normalized. So we didn't feel any sort of trauma about it specifically, or at least as very young children. I can only speak for the people who were born into it and didn't know any other life until we left. Like none of us knew until we left, and everybody started treating us strangely, or we had to try to integrate it to the normal world, because like our whole life was that neighborhood. We had nothing else, no other concept of reality. We didn't have a lot of TV. We didn't have a lot of literature that wasn't very classic or religious literature. And so I think it was probably even worse for the people who joined with their families that had a life outside of the cult and then had the shock of what, you know, the initial brainwashing of what was different than what out there in the world. Whereas my family, specifically my sisters and some of the people who were born there, we didn't have any notion of trauma until we left, and we're told that we should be traumatized, if that makes sense. But
in fact, one of those that was on the show with you, Andrea, made a comment that I don't think I'll ever forget, and it was on a phone call with her. But Chris, she told me many months ago when we started talking about all of this, she said, you know, I hated you for 15 years, Mike, because it took that long for the brainwashing to start to come to clarity. But Natalie, I don't know if you remember this statement, but she said, we didn't know it was wrong until you told us so.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. I mean, and I think it took years and years to even realize what were the parts of the abuse or the way that we lived that were going to paint our future too. Because there are things, it's strange because there's all of the sex abuse And even the stuff that's, you know, like not safe for a family show to talk about, that's there. And oftentimes that's the stuff that, you know, you shine a light on and you really work through or go to therapy about or that kind of thing. But there's the little, you know, kind of microaggressions. I know that's sort of a buzzword these days, but and the absolute control that somebody had over your life and the way you ate and the way you, when you slept and when you worked and how, like I was talking to my husband about, you know, we weren't allowed to laugh very loud. We weren't allowed to be silly. We never had Christmas. We didn't have birthdays. We didn't have parties. We didn't have fun. Fun was not allowed because that was what was fun was sex or religion. That's all we had. That was the fun stuff that we had to do. And so, you know, every once in a while we could jump rope or ride bikes or exercise and that kind of stuff. But they're just that, you know, every moment of our lives was complete, you know, lockdown. And I think that was just as difficult sometimes as even the more salacious stuff.
Wow. You know, Natalie, I'm just blown away. I mean, I am so proud of you, first of all, you know, the fact that you have empowered yourself just to even be here tonight and, you know, share your story. You know, God bless you. I mean, this is, you know, from an investigator's position, right? I mean, you really were a prisoner of war in terms of the same type of, you know, post-traumatic and all that trauma where you're isolated like that. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, just listening to you, you know, I have nothing to say. I mean, I really don't. I'm proud of you and that you're doing what you're doing here. I mean, this is amazing. It's amazing.
You know, Natalie, if you're okay, I'd like to play a segment from the show of you expressing a few things, and maybe you could talk about that.
Sure. Excuse me.
So, Natalie, I still want to pull my hair out when I think about this and about what you each were forced to endure. But I'll tell you, people are intrigued by the color wheel. Can you describe the color wheel? I don't think I've ever even mentioned it to Chris.
You know, I don't ever remember seeing it as a wheel. It was almost like I had a really strange flashback to a year or two ago when we moved into our new house, because I was at a carpet place picking out like drapes and stuff, and it was like there was the book with all of these kind of flaps, you know, of different colors and how they went together and that kind of thing. And I kind of had like chills went all over my body, and I had sort of a very visceral reaction to it, and I started getting kind of sweaty, you know, and I mean, I have a little bit of a panic disorder anyway, but I just was kind of like, I'm getting carpet for, you know, and I just don't like what's going on, and that's what I remember. Like the wheel, I don't specifically remember it being a circle, but I know that a lot of the other women do. But I just remember a book with like shades in it, and I remember my mother being very adamant that like her shades were autumn shades, and she mostly wore like a bronze or maroon. Like if you opened her closet, she had just autumn colors, and they were very specific spectrum colors and very largely like a rust color. She's very like olive skinned, and all of my little dresses or like little shorts that I had were like bright crimson red, like very, and white, red and white. Like, you, I don't know if you remember the 80s and 90s when they had those like really frilly dresses with the sailor collars. I had a million of those, and they were all just like red polka dots or red and white polka dots. So I just remember wearing tons of that, and like little Hillary Clinton red suits with big buttons. So that's all. Yeah.
So Chris, what happened was there was a belief in a color. The prophet of this group had come up with an idea that each individual woman had to wear a specific color every day. That color had to be somewhere in the ensemble. Is that correct, Natalie?
And it was it was basically the color that was most flattering to you, that made you feel, but it also, like, I had a sense that it sort of identified people too. Like when you lined the women up, or, you know, when women were in a certain house, that's kind of like, oh, that's the purple one. That's the, you know what I mean? Like everybody's super flattered and flattering, but it's also sort of like very easily identifiable all throughout the neighborhood. Like, oh, if you see Peach, that's Amber over there. If you see Blue, you know, that's Amy. Like, you just know kind of where everyone is in a strange way. If you like, I always wondered if you looked at a panoramic view, or if you're looking from, you know, a high up, you would look down and you could kind of see who was where depending on what they were wearing.
You know, Mike, what is it with these wacky nut job men that I mean, give me a break. I mean, Natalie, I'm just listening to you, you know, for the first time. I mean, outside of the stories and that Mike has shared, but I mean, I'm meeting you for the very first time here. And I'm sitting here going, what in the world, you know, for two things. Number one, you know, in your heart now, I hope, how many people you have empowered just even today, and just this very moment. Okay, number one. Number two, none of this was your fault in any way, shape, or form, ever. And I can only imagine, you know, what you've had to process all of these years. And, you know, I cannot ever comprehend, you know, what you have experienced, or your sisters and, you know, just everybody. But I can't figure out what in the world, you know, what is it with these guys? I just don't get it. I don't get it. And, you know,
let me show you a picture. Yeah. I'm gonna show you a picture because what would happen is this prophet would determine what color a person should wear, and that had to be in every part of their ensemble. He also had what he called was a thread, and for some it was high heels. For others, it might be a different kind of underwear. But everything, it was a very compulsive, obsessive compulsive environment. This is a photograph from the search warrant. And maybe you could just kind of describe, Natalie, why this photograph is so significant to the mindset that was going on then.
Well, it was really important that everything was just so, even down to how things were folded, how they were organized in drawers, color. You know, I can't see much more significance beyond that. But everything had to be perfectly in place all of the time.
So when we were going through the search warrant, all of the blue towels were stacked together, all of the yellow towels, all of the yellow intimate clothing, or the blue clothing, as you can see in this photograph here. It was all very specific and very structured. Now, I want to play a little video clip from today, if we could, Natalie, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. But maybe you could also talk about this. I loved the post you made today. I don't know if you saw that I actually commented on your post today on Facebook about the daily weigh-ins. Why don't you talk about that for this mindset of how much someone should weigh, and the pressure that placed on people every day to be weighed?
Food was just such a huge deal for some reason. And I think fitness was a big part of it. Deep down, I feel like it was just that all of the guys that were having sex with all these women wanted like hot women. You know what I mean? They wanted everybody to be super slim, and, you know, I mean, slim's always been in, but especially at that time, you know, like the very like Jane Fonda skinny women were in, you know. And so I think that everything was rather arbitrary, And I don't know what the significance, like the one thing I don't know is how each woman's pounds were supposed to be tabulated. But from what I remember, and from what I remember my mother going through and me going through, is that as close as you can be to 100 pounds is better. And so it was kind of like, the more you're over 100 pounds, the worse you are. Well, that was very difficult for some people, obviously, because they're just not built that way, kind of thing. But I think they did make a little bit of a consensus, or like they switched it around a little bit for height if you were really tall, because some of the women were fairly tall. I think Andrea's pretty tall, and that may be why she got, you know, all the way up to 108 or whatever. But like my mom's 5'5", and she had to stay, as far as I remember, like 106. She needed to stay under 106. That was her magic number. And so, and my dad's first wife is short, and all of her kids are shorter. And so, you know, their weight was smaller. And I think it was just another way to keep control over the women in their lives, kind of that always striving for perfection. Like that was sort of a mantra that we lived by. And so it was sort of like, there's no reason, if you can be perfect in heaven, you need to get as close to that on earth as you possibly can. So if part of that is physical, like they were very into kind of like this, the physical shell is a cover for your spirit, your heavenly spirit. And so if you're going to be perfect in the celestial kingdom or in heaven or whatever, then if you get as close to that as you can now, I mean, perhaps you'd even get translated or something. So
amazing.
Yeah, weight had a lot to do with that. You know, God can't reach you through layers of fat, because that's your, like, kind of your gluttony and lack of willpower, you know, fighting him or whatever. So
there's this twisted spiritual correlation to how you appear, right?
Very much, yeah.
Yeah.
And I never remember anybody saying you need to be sexy, that's why you need to be thin. Like, I was told by various women, you know, if you don't get thin, or if you don't stay thin, you're not going to, you know, be able to have a husband. You're not going to be able to please your husband. Like, who's going to want you, kind of thing. That's not something that lots of girls don't hear, you know, that, but I was never told by them that that's why they stayed thin, is because they wanted to be sexy for a man, or that their men wanted them to be that thin. It was always, I'm doing this to get closer to God.
You know, Natalie, you are such an inspiration. I'm watching the chats and what people are saying about you. Many of the people who are listening to this channel have reached out to us in the past about traumas that they have experienced in their life. And maybe just take a moment about how hard this decision was to share, but what it's meant for you to be validated by finally meeting your peers from 30 years ago, and what that's done for you.
It's meant everything. It's meant everything. It was a really long struggle to get to this place, because ever since we were born, we were secrets. Everything about our life has always been a secret. So it was, at first, we were trained, I mean, staunchly trained, taken into investigation rooms and had trainings where someone would dress up and be the good cop and try to make us tell our story, or be the bad cop and try to intimidate us into talking to you guys. That's why we all hated you guys, is because they would put on police caps, etc., and, you know, and interrogate us. And if we told, we could explode our entire world, and bad people would come and lock us up and lock our parents up and take us away. So that was. Can I stop you right there? Yeah.
I want to just mention, Chris, and to our viewers, we discovered something really strange when these children we took them into protective custody, and when we had them in, one of the things that you do in a forensic examination in a child sexual assault case is you present an anatomically correct doll to help talk through the story of what happened to you and where were you touched, and to the T, every one of these children, they acted almost like we had thrown a stick of dynamite into their laps when we presented an anatomical doll. And it wasn't until later that we discovered that the group leaders had actually purchased an anatomical doll, and they called it the Devil's Doll. And one of the chapters in my book talks about the Devil's Dolls.
Interesting.
And these children were mortified. And when we presented these things, it had an absolute reverse effect that we could have never understood. And so as Natalie's describing this anti-interrogation training they went through, I wanted to put that into perspective. So please, Natalie, continue on.
Oh yeah, they anthropomorphized a lot of things like that. You know, like the doll, where not to say. I had dolls when I was older that I would have to face them away from me, or like be afraid of them or play with them all equally, because I was afraid that the dolls would be upset. Like, I don't know, like I would do strange things like that because we were taught about spirits and devils and how things, you know, how things were sort of imbued with energies and that kind of stuff. And so it was I know that's kind of a tangent, so. But where were we going?
No, and while you're talking about that, some of the comments have been coming in saying what horrible men these were. Maybe you could just
and nothing is a tangent. Nothing is a tangent. You go.
I'm a tangent
you
queen.
Go, girl. You go, girl. Just keep going.
Talk about the predatory nature of the women.
It was, I don't remember very many men. And I remember my uncle specifically. I remember a few other men. But I even remember my grandpa, but it was mostly Arvin, but it was mostly specific women who ruled the roost, really. And so
committed the sexual assaults.
Yes. And a lot of these women felt very empowered, because, I mean, they would say behind their hands, yes, we have a prophet. Yes, the man is the head of the household. But I can't tell you how many times I would hear, but the sister council is the, in heaven, women are the holiest ones. And women are, we know about God, but we don't know about the goddess, or like his wife, because she's the most holy and she's the most sacred, and that's who we are. And so we really make the decisions. We really are closest to the spirit. And so what we want and what we do behind closed doors to you and to each other is the most holy thing. And men are kind of these base creatures that we have to let be the head of the household because they need responsibility, kind of like there's a very sort of, weird matriarchal society there. And they were the ones doing the sexual training. They were the ones, there was kind of an alpha woman in each sister council, I feel like, or they numbered the wives, I think, like depending on who was there first or whatever. Honestly, I don't know how that worked. But it was it was them that took care of us and taught us how to be sexual, how to be pretty, how to please a man, how to sew, how to cook, how to clean, how to garden. Like, men had very little to do with us unless it was, they came home from work or doing what they did and were with the women eating or at night, So it was very much women were with women, and even the male children were generally more with the men.
Yeah. Folks, I hope go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, Michael. Go ahead. You know where you're headed.
No, I hope you'll go back and watch the Dr. Phil episode today. It was so tastefully handled, and these amazing survivors were. I just kept scratching my head, saying, "How on earth did I luck out to get to know these folks. And that's probably sounds kind of weird, doesn't it, Natalie? That
No,
how did
because
I?
we do the same thing. I mean, we talk about it all of the time. Like, especially Dawn and I, or like, you know, our siblings and stuff. If we were still there, I mean, what would have our lives been like? Or would we ever have been able to leave? Or would we be weirdly brainwashed? Because I mean, like I was going to say before, when you were asking, you know, how things were, like even when we left, it's always been a secret. It's always been, don't talk about it. It never happened the way you remembered. You know, our parents tried to pretty much go mainstream. So it's been very swept under the rug, and don't dwell on it. If you dwell on the past, if you dwell on the pain, then you're not giving your burdens to God, and it's not, you know, just pray it away kind of thing. And like, I think most of that has been to protect them from shame, not to protect us, you know. And sometimes, you know, they would say, don't talk about it, because we have younger siblings who were born after the raid and born after the cult happened. They didn't want them to have to deal with the consequences of being part of a family, how embarrassing it is, how the culture that they are in is very much about appearances and that kind of thing. And I didn't think they want to like deal with the consequences of the past, which is, now that we're adults and have our own children, like pretty terrible, I think, to put on somebody's shoulders. So that's the one thing that we really appreciate you getting in contact with us and having us come together as a group, because it's easy to talk to one person. Like, I've always had this fear, even if I'm talking to my husband or talking to friends or whatever, like, and there's always a little bit of doubt, like, oh, okay, is this person being bombastic, or are they really being honest? Like, I've had therapists accuse me of lying, or maybe diagnose me with, like, do you have a disorder that makes you make up stories to be a victim and that kind of thing? And I'm like, no, this, you know, and my own mother didn't believe part of what I told her happened to me, because she didn't want to, or she thought that you specifically, I heard your name, had told the kids or to lie about this, to, you know.
I was hated by many people in that organization.
And so I think the fact that we could all come together, and I mean, there's so many more of us that didn't even feel like you could go on the show, but even just talking to them or hearing them and really feeling that validation and verification of, like, yes, this did happen. No, my memories are not crazy and weird. Like, this was a thing, you know, and I'm not, you know, the only person that was affected by this, or the only person that feels like upset about it, because for so long we were taught not to be upset about it. And if we were upset about it, it was our fault. We were dwelling, you know, and that's been a big thing in my family. And finally I got to the point where I'm like, do you know what? I'm almost 40 years old. Like, I get to be mad about this, because, like, yeah, it was kind of screwed up, you know? And so it helps a lot to be able to talk to these other women.
Yeah. I still can't today imagine being told, just get over it, when folks, there were literally, in fact, I mentioned to Dr. Phil that at least 4,000 counts of rape of children in this cult, or serious felony sexual assaults against children. And I was corrected by you ladies that it was much higher than that. It is unbelievable and hard to fathom.
Every day, it was every hour. It was just our whole life was some form of abuse, emotional, physical, or sexual. Like, I can't think of any time that was just joy, you know. We weren't allowed to have joy. We're going longer than normal, but I hope you'll stay with us, Natalie. Could I play one more clip, and then would you be willing to answer any questions from people? Sure. Yeah.
And you can always say, I'm not answering that question, by the way.
No, so I know. I have no shame, not anymore.
Just this one clip where Dr. Phil kind of talked to all five of you for a moment. And you represented, of course, the rest of the group. Because of COVID, we could only have four there and one virtually. But
yeah, I mean, what do you say? There's nothing to say. I mean, it just, I've been in this business since 1982, and I've investigated some horrific things. And Natalie, I just keep coming back to, this idea of that I'm so proud of you as another human being, that you've been able to empower yourself. But more importantly, you're not only empowering yourself, you're empowering your children. You have broken us. You are. You're empowering all those that come to know you. And that is so very important to embrace. As in your life. I know it's taken you years to get to just this point here where all this mishigosh and people saying, and lying, or this and that. Okay. Trust me, I see it. I know it's real. And if anybody's going to say anything, you send them over, and we'll tune them up here on Profiling Evil. So you have a question here from Sterling. Has the cult permanently scarred you towards God or religion? That's an interesting question.
I have a hard time with that question because I had a very short road to atheism, pretty much, and it seems very condescending to me when my family says, well, we understand because of what you went through that you decided that there was no God or whatever. And I reject that categorically, only because I'm not completely an atheist. I guess I'm more agnostic. I just have always kind of been an empiricist, and I don't like the idea of putting anybody, I don't want to offend anyone, but I just you can't prove a negative, and you can't prove that there's a God. And I think I have never been presented with a God that I found particularly pleasing to me, or I'm not exactly excited about the patriarchal God, the white patriarchal God. I'm not exactly excited about any pagan gods or any kind of strange religions or powers. I kind of just am fine with shrugging my shoulders and saying, I don't know. Is there something bigger than us? Probably. Are there weird things that we can't define? Absolutely. I am not worried so much about the unquantifiable thing that's going to happen in the sky later or wherever. I'm worried about what is going on here on Earth and how we treat each other and the good we can do here and everything else.
Yeah, no.
Who can say?
Yeah.
But I definitely would say that it put me off anybody who claims to speak to God for other people. Definitely.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
understand.
I think that if there is any person who says that, I call automatically, bull crap on that. So I don't. I would say that for sure. But it gets my Irish up a little bit when people are like, oh, well, you don't, you're that way because of what you went through. No, I'm not. I have a brain. I'm not just a victim. I make logical decisions, and I have thoughts that don't have anything to do with my trauma. I make decisions that don't have anything to do with that. So I find that condescending a little bit.
Yeah, no, don't worry about any of that. I mean, the universe is on schedule. Okay. And
I definitely doomsday stuff too. Like when people are kind of like, it's the end of the world, I get a little bit like,
yeah, there's this idea that, we kind of get it. So here's American Girl. How many of the group showed up today? That platform showed few, but the wall was covered. How many of your other gals showed up?
Well, yeah, maybe I can answer on the show. The pictures for those who were watching in the background, because now of COVID, the audience was empty except for me and Robin, Dr. Phil's wife. And so all of those pictures were people that were digitally attending from all over the world as a sample audience to respond. Because of COVID, we were only allowed to have 4 of the women physically there along with me. And then we had the prosecutor and Andrea, one of the other survivors of this case, who were dialed in. And frankly, to do more than that would have become really difficult in such a short amount of time. But Natalie, a lot of questions have come about what happened in your life since then. And that's really what I'd like to talk about now is all this cool stuff. And I want to reiterate one thing I said to Dr. Phil at the end, which was I was so proud of you guys because you beat him and you beat this society. And I am just still just busting at the seams. And all of these survivors, Chris, are used to me now. I keep calling them kids because in my mind, I still saw all these children, but I just feel like a busting at the seams parent at the fact that facing hundreds and hundreds of sexual assaults, they beat him, they beat the women. And folks, this wasn't men only that were the abusers, and they beat a system that was so predatory on children. But each of the survivors has kind of found their own special way. One of them is a comedian in Los Angeles and talks about these cold experiences, and that's how she deals with it. Others are successful business people or realtors. And Natalie, I'm going to rat you out, is this incredibly successful romance novelist. And I want to pull up a picture, Natalie. This to me is, so if you'll please look up online and buy every book you can, Kerrigan Byrne. This is Natalie.
That's
and
actually
this is
my mystery, but yeah.
This is the name that she goes by. So Natalie, tell them what your life is like today and about your amazing husband who I've met and your children. Just tell them what life is like for Natalie today.
Life was weird. I promised I was never going to get married and I was never going to give my life to a man, but I was at the gym one time, the one time I ever went, pretty much. And I met this guy who was divorced, had 3 little girls, and I was only 20 at the time, and we just fell in love, and a year later we got married. And I've never had any other children, but we raised his 3 girls together, and he was from a home he was raised by, alcoholics, drug addicts, and it was very important to both of us to break both of the cycles in our lives. And so, we gave our kids the life that they didn't get to have, and they all went to college. They all had all the Christmases, they all had all the tooth fairies and the Easter baskets and, the boyfriends and the proms and all that, good stuff and they're all now adults. I mean, I've been married 18 years, so we're empty nesters now, and we're just kind of hanging out by the ocean, and I write my books, walk my dog, and I always wanted to be a writer. I worked in law enforcement for about 10 years, doing evidence collection and that kind of thing for an officer involved shooting task force, white collar crimes task force. And I've always been in love with mystery novels and true crime stuff. I really get off on what you guys do, but so I wrote My Business of Blood is about a woman who does that in the Victorian era. She cleans up crime scenes for people who are victims of murder. And so she kind of gets involved in the mysteries because she finds things and she, or people come back to the crime scene or whatever. And so she she's sort of this amateur sleuth / cleaning up the blood is her job kind of thing. So, and then my romances, I started reading them probably too young, but that's fine. Like there wasn't anything so exciting in there like that I didn't already know. But I found one of my friends in junior high or something, her grandma had a Harlequin subscription, and like have always been a voracious reader. It's the one thing I learned to do early. It's the one thing I was ever good at. And so I started reading like started with Jane Eyre and that kind of stuff, but then I started reading Harlequins and was just really kind of profoundly changed by what a romance novel hero is versus the men in my life, And so I've always been interested in history and literature and that kind of thing. So I'll read like Man's Search for Meaning, and then I'll reach for a Daniel Steele, you know what I mean? So it's sort of like just always kind of my brain candy. And so I just thought, one of these days I'm going to write a romance novel, and I did it. And I, on a whim, kind of sent it to an agent, and she picked me up that week. And then she sent it to, the first editor that she sent it to at Macmillan picked me up in a week, and I signed a contract. And so now I write romance novels. But in a way, I feel like it's an advocacy, because in my novels, there are always women who would be whole people without having a man in their lives. They all, they want educations. They're very forward thinking and progressive. They are usually raging against some kind of machine, suffragists and, that kind of thing. And so, and they learn how to have great sex, that's like empowering for them, and that's consensual and that's loving. And I just feel like I learned how, in a strange way, to have a good relationship from romance novels. So they kind of have a soft spot in my heart, even though I don't think that I'll be there forever. Because you can only write so many of those before, you run out
Natalie,
of positions to write about.
I hope that you will come back and visit again. When I asked the survivors of this thing who would like to come on, I shut the door as soon as Natalie said yes, because I thought we'll bring one at a time on as we talk about this case over time. To all of you who have listened tonight, thank you. And please know that my life was forever changed because of Natalie and the women that were around her, children at the time and now women today. And Chris, we have gone longer than normal, but I just didn't want to stop listening to Natalie. So I'll see if you have anything.
Rambly.
No. I'll see if you have anything you'd like to say in closing, Chris, and then let's give Natalie a moment to respond, and then we'll call it a night.
So, Natalie, one of the things that has inspired me tonight, listening to you, the totality of your story, but the empowerment that you have brought to the world. Don't stop empowering. One of the most interesting things that Viktor Frankl said, as you remember, in A Man's Search for Meaning, they took everything from me, but one thing. They could not take my dignity. You keep going and you keep writing. And I promise you, you will continue to be an influence for good in the lives of many, many people that come into your life. And I want to thank you tonight for changing my life, and probably a lot of the many folks that follow us here on PE. And we're very grateful for everybody that has been here this evening to listen to your story. So thank you. Keep going. Don't look behind you. And I appreciate having an opportunity to meet you and to listen to your story.
Thank you. It's wonderful to meet you too. I want to keep in touch with you, Mike, too. I think a lot of us have been talking about further advocacy and what we can do what we can do more. Like none of us feel finished. I certainly don't. Sometimes I just lie in bed, especially since we've talked, and I feel like I'm on fire with this. Like I want to go save all the women, all the children. So like I just sometimes feel like my hands are tied in a strange way for that, and I don't know sometimes what the next step would look like, but I want to take it.
Well, I think the next step is going to be, as we continue to pound this drum, we will get opportunity to speak in locations, in conferences. Tonight, we'll reach thousands of people, but in the coming days, that thousands will turn into tens of thousands, and it will continue to grow. And so we'll continue to do that. And Chris, I've already told them all that once we get back into the conference mode and we can go out and speak in conferences, people don't want to hear me. They want to hear from you survivors, Natalie, and we'll get opportunities to do that and train law enforcement and speak to victims advocacy groups and to others. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You know what a special spot you hold in my heart. And it is just, I just am so proud of you all. Folks, until we see you on Thursday night, which we're going to be talking about cadaver dogs, right? Chris?
Cadaver dogs. Do not miss this.
Cadaver dogs. And that'll be an interesting night. Thanks to all of you. And please be safe. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Hit the subscribe button.
Good to meet you, Chris.